it says Hakdama the Chanukah Purim Na'ata and Na'atcha. He's a Mesidah Rashash Zia. Chanukah B'Purim he mitzvahs asay the Rabbanan. So he wants to say that. Okay. And he said B'Shehem B'Yisod, and that's the part right there. He says that it takes place, they place in the Yisod. Shehem Yaakov Rachel. What is the Yisod? He says the name, the Yisod is called Yaakov and Rachel. So the question is, what Yisod is he talking about that says it's Yaakov and Rachel? So Yaakov, it means they're down at the bottom. Shehem Malchios the Ma'u Ben the Kol Pratech HaPartzufim. So he says Yaakov and Rachel are also known as the Malchios of Ma'u Ben in every individual parts of. So there are all the flow of light. The zivugim that takes place either prior to or afterwards, and the brachos, hem mishorshe Yaakov and Rachel el Yonim, they come from Yaakov and Rachel el Yonim. Where do they go from there? The Yaakov and Rachel, to call the pratim, to all the different parts of him. What's the purpose of this? He says the purpose is the ma'alos mayim nukami beberuch kalim v'oros. The rapach is to take. Let's go through the words a little bit. Is to elevate mayim nukvin. Where's the mayim nukvin come from? From berurim kalim v'oros, the rock of the Yaakov Rachel Dazun. Okay, so he says it's coming from the bottom. It's always coming from the bottom. He's calling the bottom Rachel. Why it is called Yesod and not Malchus, he calls it Yesod. Now, let me see where this goes. A second before. Okay, let's read along. The Yaakov Rachel Dazun. The Yaakov Rachel the Yisrael Sava, and then it's going upwards. This is Mayim Nukvin. V'Tavuna u'mehem the Yaakov and Rachel the Ava v'Ima, and from them the Yaakov and Rachel of Ava v'Ima. V'chein al derek zecha b'chad Roma ma'alos. This is the movement from the bottom to the top. V'laham shech l'tzalm mecha b'mocha d'macha d'ben, and to bring down the oros, which is the tzalim of the mochin d'ma u'ben, the tzalme the lamed men b'bracha. So he says u'ben. Excuse me, I said lamed on it, but it's salme, the lamed. These are the salim, the lamed mem, which come in as a result of the bracha itself. When you actually do the mitzvah, what it would be is that brings in the tzalm. The maisa brings in the tzadi, the tzalm. Now all of that actually really requires some hesber. Just let's make a check and see how the tiv works out in your book versus mine on number aleph down below. His first word is beer in mine. Do you have that? What's your first word? So say number aleph is Chanukah b'Purim heim mitzvahs asay the Rabbanan shehem b'Yisod shehem Yaakov Rachel. And then the next word it says beer or Rashash. That's what.
Yeah, I have that.
Well, let's see how much you have and that I have. That's maybe didn't rewrite it. So he says mitzvahs the oraisa b'mitzvahs the Rabbanan chalukim heim. There's a difference between them. Shepolim hayichud b'partzufim shonim. So he says that they actually affect different partzufim. Shebemitzvahs the oraisa mamshichim mochim miyachdem as zuna gedolim. So because when you're doing the Zoda, you're talking about zuna gedolim. B'mitzvah the Rabbanan mamshichim mochim miyachdem as zuna getanim tahani Yaakov Rachel. V'lohavonos the inyan sheYaakov Rachel nikroim yesod. That one. I am b'shefa Rashash. There's a shefa over here that could kind of maybe help us out. So did all those words fit with you?
I don't have the shefa.
You don't have the shefa?
No.
Okay, but the words so far are okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so in this part, so let's read a little bit more because it's interesting that he's actually brought in something that we didn't know before. He says that there's a difference between mitzvahs and what parts of it's affected by the mitzvahs that arise of the Rabbanan. Okay, so going to the next one, number bet, the shehem b'malchius the ma'u ben to call pratia partzufim. So it's the Malchus and the Ben, right? Malchus and Ben, Ma'u Ben, really could refer to Zachar V'Nuk. That's what it usually is. Where does Zun come from? They come from the Nekudos of the Tachtona Shel Shem Ben Shuhu Yotze Me'ene Ak, which comes out of the eyes of the Ak, that's our Ben, which was originally Sag, which had broke. So he says that Aki means Adam Kadmon, he says. V'chein mizayin nekudas Tachtona Shel Shem Ma, also from the Zayin Tachtonas of the Shem Ma Sheyotze B'Metzach the Ak, also that is the Ma and the Ben. V'chashisha nekudas Elyonos, which are what? Shehem nekroim klalos zer anpin, uvechem atzvach b'yesh za v'nuk. And those using those, you have a male aspect, a female aspect. Za is 6. The malchus is 1. V'ashisha nekuda dema is zer anpin. V'ashisha nekuda shel ben nekroim nuk. Okay, this is a match between the twos or those 6s. V'yachan nekroim zuna gedolim. Now together, they're called Zuna Gedolim. I like this they're called Zuna Gedolim when you match the 2 6s. So the V'chamalchio sheb'shneihem, now there's a malchus that goes with Nekroim Zuna Getanim Shem Yaakov Rachel. Now that's an old fact that I don't think I have in my vocabulary. I don't think that I actually thought of it this way. Zuna Gedolim, he says, is the 6 and the 6. Let me just read it again. I'm sorry to have to go over Shisha Nekudos. We're talking from a place where it's the Shisha Nekudos of Yonos. Shadachem Nekroim B'klalos Za, Zeranpin. Uvebechem Atzva Yesh Za V'Nuk. So in them, generally speaking, there is a Zachar V'Nuk. Shashisha Nekudos Dema, who is Zeranpin, V'Shisha Nekudos Shel Ben Nekroim Nuk. Now, this is the, going on. V'yachad Nekroim Zun Hagadolim. Now together they're called Zuna Gedolim. Now when that's a 6, that's called Zuna Gedolim. But when you go down, there's another partsif down there which is called Zuna Getanim, which is Yaakov and Rachel. Now going on to the next part, he says the Fichu v'Kolam Shachol v'Chazivugim Haniskarim bebrachos Heim b'Shorsha Yaakov and Rachel. So he says all of the what? The hamshachos of the zivugim, the action is all taking place in Yaakov and Rachel. They're down at the bottom of the Yaakov and Rachel to call the pratim. From the Yaakov and Rachel, I guess of Atzilus, let's see what he says. Kol zivugim and ha'atzah bebrachos shall mitzvahs the rabbanim shaykhin liyachid Yaakov and Rachel should be called parts of they're really relevant to all the different parts of it. There's a Yaakov and Rachel. The fisher mitzvahs the rabbanim in the mitzvahs. From the mitzvahs of Rabbanim, a yichud shebechem hu yichud Yaakov v'Rachel, the ultimate yichud is there v'lechein. Kol hazivugim and na'asa yedecha v'mitzvahs the Rabbanim, meroma ma'alos ad mata ad lamata, from the, in other words, all of the partsufim, from the very inception. Heim kula b'Yaakov v'Rachel, he says meroma ma'alos ad lamata, he says, what is the word? Kol hazivugim. All of the Zivugim start with Yaakov and Rachel. Should be called parts of the height of Yaakov and Rachel should be Atek, or Yaakov and Rachel should be Rich, and then the ends of V'chein Kulam. And then reading along number Dalet. V'hula alkos mayim nukmi beberucha bekalim. So this is the idea to bring up mayim nukmi beberucha v'oris the Rapach, the Yaakov and Rachel, the Zun. So always to keep going upwards, the Yaakov and Rachel, the Yatza, the Yasos, going up to the next set of Yaakov and Rachel's, the Shas Bracha, Ma'alim Mayim Mukhnif Ma'Rachel, the Zun, the Yasos. The Lechein Beberchus, the Rabbanim, Shehebi Yaakov and Rachel, also Yaakov and Rachel, he says, HAKAVANOT la'alos mayim, the Yaakov and Rachel should be called parts of, that's the idea, that's what's going on there. So he says, so keep reading along this as long as we're on the same page. I think some of this I think we could do without getting into the tiv, but it's okay. So he says we're on number hey. He says Mechem the Yaakov v'Rachel the Abba v'Ima, and then it's me the next one V'chein al derek zeh ad Roma ma'alos all the way up. Let's go to number Zion. Now, in order to be able to bring down those oros, so maybe this is something that it's easy to understand, but I haven't heard it before. I'm not sure. So let's go on. So there's Achasha Alino Mayim Nukvin at Roma Ma'alo. So now we take the Mayim Nukvin and we bring it up to the highest possible place next to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Mamshichim Mochem V'Tzelem the Chodesh, the Yaakov Rachel the Zun. You bring down a new Tzelem. V'Hem Nimshachin Keseder Medregos, and they go through the Medregos Merona Ma'alos of Yaakov Rachel. V'Tzelem Kolam Elam B'Mem the Tzelem Shehein Mochem the Amakifim, as we know. V'Atzad the Tzelem Mochem the Benimim. V'Seder Chushe B'Bracha Nimshachin Mochem Amakifim Shehein Elam B'Mem the Tzelem. In the Bracha, that's what happened. Just saying it over, but it's good to hear it again. He says, when you say the bracha itself, you bring down the lights that come from the outside. The bracha is very ethereal. Of the ma'aser of the mitzvah, when you do the mitzvah atzma, ma'amshichem atzadi the tzalim she'enem mochen the benimim, which are the tzadi, the tzalim mochen the benimim. Now we go into we're on a piece right here that actually requires explanation. Do you have a drawing down at the bottom of this page or somewhere? Pische or Rashash? You do. Okay. So, all right. So, I'm sorry I can't get this to you. It's very frustrating because we could look at that shefet, but I don't want to say it just by myself. So, anyway, there's a lot here. Now it goes like this: it's a mitzvah rabbanim delo saser. So he's going to explain a little bit. So there's the Rishon rabbanim come from the concept of lo saser. And there, this is another set of words that's difficult. He said they are in the Yesod of the Chamisha Gavuros. What are the Chamisha Gavuros? Or the Yesod? He said, this goes with the word Yesod, Shehem Yaakov Rachel, the parts of Keser, Chochma, Bina. Now, offhand, this just doesn't make any sense to me. He says, first he says the mitzvah, the Rabbanim, is the lo saucer from that pasuk. He explain that a little bit. V'chein b'yisod the chamisha gavuros, and that is the sod of the chamisha gavuros. Now, why he takes the chamisha gavuros, and he says in the chamisha gavuros is like a partziv, which has a yisod. Shehem Yaakov v'Rachel. And what is the name of that yisod? The yisod is called Yaakov v'Rachel, but that's not enough. So he says the Yaakov and Rachel of which partziv? The partziv, he says, of Keser, Chochma, Bina. So he says, normally we would think, well, Keser is a partziv, Chochma. He says he lumps them together. He said because that's the Rosh. So the Rosh has a partziv of its own. So this is a little confusing, or it's very typical also. Now, let's go over here where he says like this, the Gemara in Shabbos, he says, it's Gemara in Shabbos, and he says, Daf Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph. There's a my mevarech. There's a my mevarech. What are we blessing? Mevarech asher kitshana b'mitzvaysa v'tzivana lahadik ner shel Chanukah. When we say what's the bracha, this is the bracha. V'heichen sivanu. So where does this mitzvah come from? Where it says v'tzivana lahadik ner. Where's that idea come from? He says. It comes from the pasuk lo saser. This is the pasuk itself that don't turn away from the mitzvah. Nirma's mitzvahs the Rabbanan. This is a mitzvah the Rabbanan. It's a lav. It's a lav the Rabbanan, he says. B'varsh Rashash, the Rashash thinks like this. The B'kol mitzvah the Rabbanan mekaimim the lav say that every time there's a mitzvah the Rabbanan, it's fulfilled by a law, a positive and a negative and a positive. A membership of positive HAKODESH that comes from the positive. For the previous positive, it says like this: "V'rasiso al piha dibor asher yigidu loch," or maybe it's a davar. So this was al piha davar asher yigidu loch. That you should do according to the words that I'm going to say to you. K'kol l'sher yorucha, all that I will teach you. Mitzvahs that say the mitzvahs the Rabbanan. So we see from this that it says you have to do this. So therefore, it's the mitzvah say the Rabbanan. Sha'anim mitzvah the kaim call the mitzvahs the Rabbanan, because we're commanded to fulfill all the mitzvahs the Rabbanan. Sha'ana mitzvah the kaim call the mitzvahs the Rabbanan. So that's what Lo Saser is all about. But Lo Sasu, Lo Sase, so what do we get from the Halo Sase? Ukanal, like we said before, Commercial Ravana, Baragamora, Barapasav, the Lo Saser. What we get from that? Shalol the mitzvahs, the Rabbanan, that should we be careful not to disobey the mitzvahs, the Rabbanan. So he says, Vihine, so he says, V'chaklalhu, Shekol mitzvahs lo sa'aseh, aim the parts of kochov. So there's another idea. So according to the Rashash, he says the concept of the mitzvah sa'aseh come from the top of, from the head. They come from kochov. The call mitzvahs aseh, aim the parts of Haganai. Okay, so here we're dealing with Partsufim. That's what he says. Let me see if we can get a better focus. Okay, that's the best I could do. And each one of these Partsufim, mitzvahs the Rabbanan, heim chelech yisod shel the Partsufim ha'ela. Let's read this again. So he's just first he said that the mitzvahs lo sa'aseh come from the kochov. The mitzvahs lo saseh. Remember, I got this backwards. He said v'hidech klal kusha kol mitzvahs lo saseh aim the parts of kochav. So the lo saseh comes there. The aseh comes to the kochav, the parts of the chagat nai, which is because that leads into malchus, which is the action, where the action takes place. I'll think about it like that. Shall the parts of ma'elu. Shall yisod azecha b'nikra v'rakov v'yochel. So he says that the yisod here. I have to go back and read it in context again. I'm sorry. In the end of the first slide is a bakol echa me'elach partzufim. Mitzvahs the rabbanim heim chelech yisod shal partzufim ha'elu. So now we're looking at the yisod. Then he says the name for the yisod, Zerah b'nikra Yaakov and Rachel, is called Yaakov and Rachel. The yisod is called Yaakov and Rachel. The hindach shekol mitzvahs the rabbanim. He bebechinas malchus. This is all the aspect of malchus. So how do we get? I'm getting mixed up because he said they're Yaakov and Rachel. Now he says they're, which is Yisod. Now he says shekol mitzvahs the rabbanan. He bechinas malchus in general, and they're crying parts of Yaakov and Rachel, which is also called by that name. Shepartzufim elun they crying b'seidach sfiras Yisod. So he says that these partzufim going according to the order of the spheros of Yisod. What does that mean? Elisha chelek mitzvahs halos aseh. Sheyesh b'chol mitzvah the rabbanan, that you have these los asehs and all the mitzvah the rabbanan. V'hi masha kosa b'teira. This is what the course of lo saucer. Don't turn aside. Hu chelek Yaakov v'Rachel shall parts of a kochov. This is talking about, since it's a lo, it's a love. So therefore, it's talking about the chelek the Yaakov v'Rachel shall parts of a kochov. Shulcha b'partzu shal mitzvahs lo saseh, which is a kochav, which we said before, goes on the mitzvahs lo saseh. The lo saseh the rabbanan hu Yaakov v'Rachel shal partzu v'zeh l'chavonas and yodim ayin b'tavla. So, and understand this, he has a tavla down below. So we can look at the tavla. I'm not sure where this is coming from. To me, it's like a little bit outer spatial. So let's look at the tavla. See if we can get a better view. Still not working good. So let's just look at what it says. This is our good old tavla. It says a seder yud spheres apratos. He says like this, and he says parts of kochov. So we have on the one side we have the parts of kochov. That's on the right, and on the left side we have the parts of chagat nai. Okay, this is straight Rashash. So both of them are the zer anpin. Let's go back to the right again. He says specifically, Sochem v'chatzilus, hanisakim al yedech v'mitzvahs lo saseh. Which all of this, he said that. And then down on the next one, going to the other side, is the parts of Chagat Nai, the zer anpin, the chatzilus, hanisakim al yedech v'mitzvahs aseh. So that's gives you pretty much what he had said in regards to this. Let me see if this will help. Help me, maybe. Yeah. So he says, so then he comes underneath that. He looks at the Kesser. Let's look at the right side. Kesser, Tiferes, and Yisod, the middle lines. So he says, basically, it's Chabad, Chagat, Nai, you see in the boxes. So the first one, it says Chochma is Atik. He says Bina. He says, I guess it's going right straight across. Is Chug the Das. Well, it could go Bina is the Nuk the Atik, and then the Chug the Das is Eric Anpin the Nuk. Now this doesn't really. Okay, let's say that's words for them. I don't know what to do with it exactly. So then there's a concept here. The Das Elyon is the guard the Eric Anpin. It's let's see what he means. Loving. So he says the loving. Shebechem, Krisos, Mises, based in Das Tachton. So that's Das Elyon. Das Elyon is the Gardarit, which is the Kochov, and it includes in it Lavim, Shebechem, Krisos, and Mises, based in. Das Tachton is the Vok, the Eric Anpin, which is really going into the Vok of Eric Anpin. Lavim, Sheyesh, Bechem, Malkos. So what to do with this exactly, I don't know, but this is what he's telling us. Then you go to the Chagat. Chagat, the Chesed refers to the Abba, I guess the Abba of the parts of Kachov, and the Gevura is going to be the Ima that parts of, and the Tiferes is going to be the Yasis of that parts of. Lav She'ein Bo Maisa. This refers to Lavim She'ein Bo Maisa. Now, this whole thing is really to bring us down to what's going on in the Nai. So in the Netzach, he says, Zer Anpin Lav Anitak La'aseh. The Hod is Lav Anitak La'aseh, is Nuk. This is one was Zer Anpin, the other is Nuk Hagadoila. And then you have Yesod, is Yaakov and Rachel Lavin the Rabbanan. This seems to be, since we're dealing about Chanukah, and Chanukah is the Rabbanan. So on the other side, you have the same ideas. You have basically the same words in the first part. We did the Chagat Nai, the Tzilas, Hanisaktim, Al Yedech Mitzvah Saseh. Okay, we said that. And it says like this, there's a Chochmah that comes from Atik. It's called the Atik of this Partzef, the Partzef of Chagat Nai. Bina is the Nuk the Atik, and the Chagat is the Eric Anpin, the Nuk of Atik. Chachug the Das. So he says Chug the Das has two different parts, Eric Anpin, the Nuk. So the Chesed is Abba of the Partzef, Gevura is the Ima that Partzef, and Yasef. So all of this business of dividing up Partzufim like this is the real Chiddush of the way that the Rashash works. And then you have Netzach, and you have Hod, and I just go to Yaakov and Rachel, who represent Yesod. Now that's his whole point, is to tell us that, and I'll just take it for what it is. Let's go on to number Tes up above. He said, now that's a phrase that really throws me. So he's saying implied that the Yesod of the Chamisha Gevuros are also parts of. That's what it sounds like to me. Ki mitzvahs lo sa'aseh him Gevuros are also in the Gevur category. But mitzvahs aseh him chasadim. V'gam v'mitzvahs aseh the Rabbanah the V'rasiyas al pi hadibor. So they're doing something al pi what is stated. V'hem be Yaakov and Rachel. All of this is going to take place in Yaakov and Rachel, the parts of Chagat V'nai, and that parts of called Chagat V'nai. So he says, "Ubekol mitzvahs the Rabbanan shemekayim every mitzvah you fulfill yeshnam gam kein mitzvah shal ba'asisa al pi hadibor." Shechoya mitzvahs asay the Rabbanan, because these are all mitzvahs asay the Rabbanan. L'chein he shayachas gam parts of Chagat V'nai, so therefore it also goes along with those that parts of shehin parts of a mitzvahs, which is the parts of where actually the action takes place of mitzvahs asay. Oh, he said the mitzvahs asay. We said that Yaakov and Rachel, or that Chagat V'nai, really refers to the mitzvahs asay. That's the lower sixth. V'hu b'Yaakov and Rachel shall the parts of Israel, and where actually does it take place? In the Yaakov and Rachel of that part. Now, let's read a little bit across the top. I think we just came through a vocabulary lesson there, which is vocabulary about Partzufim, based on that drawing we saw. So on the top it says Hine Inyan Kavanas Berchos Ner Chanukah. So what's the Inyan, the Kavanah there? Shoshim Sovim Al Yichud Echad Elyon Hanikra written a Ner. That's interesting that we've been learning, that we're seeing this over there in the night Rashas. It all goes together with the concept of Ner. What's Pshat Ner? Ner V'hu Shechavayz Bracham Rishona Yaakov Av V'Kasa. Those two together, which have a gematria of Regal, which we talked about before. If he goes bracha shniya Yaakov, when you get to that, when you come to the second bracha, the idea is that you have a sag for Elokim pashut, and you have the sag named sag, and you have an Elokim pashut that mixes with that. If he goes a bracha shlisha Yaakov ma va'adne pashut, you have those two in mind. Okay, so I guess we're out of time, and so I guess that's where we will stop, and we'll see whether or not we want to get into this more. I really would like to get into just what's going on in the Rashash, the Siddur itself. But we'll do the best we can. There's a lot of new information here. Thank you very much, Rabbi Kotu.